Cool. This might be a little small for people. Let me know and I'll try to zoom in. So when it comes to operating on chain, a lot of it in early 2019, 2020 was really just you had to learn how to hop between UIs and explorers. A lot of the protocols would come and go, sometimes within days, often usually like months. So if you deposit your money somewhere in a protocol, there's no guarantee when you go back to withdraw it in like 2 weeks or 2 months that the UI is going to look the same, or if the app is still there, right? And so you might go back and you don't know, did the UI change? Did the protocol change? Was there a new version? Did the contracts upgrade? Did the tokens get rewrapped somewhere? And so it's this constant process of like hopping between a UI, doing research on another tool, going to an explorer to like double check things, and then going back to the UI to then actually execute. And this is before we even had like wallets that did simulations. So you were kind of you were really just throwing into the wild back then, right? And so a lot of the opportunities in that day and age went to the people who were crazy enough to really try and keep up with all these UIs and explorers, like basically as a full-time job, right? That gave rise to the degens that are so respectfully named today. So that was in 2020, 2021. The protocols have gotten more complex. The developer experience has gotten better in a lot of senses in terms of we have much better ways of simulating, of testing, of doing like CI/CD, contract deployments, all of the security stuff has improved as well. But I don't really think that those improvements have been seen at the user level, right? The Ethereum ecosystem and most crypto ecosystems have really over-indexed on just helping developers versus actually making general UIs or general user experience much better. Like I really don't think we saw wallets start to improve until maybe like a year ago. I think we considered like Ravi was starting to get better of like, oh, we actually simulations are now actually expected. Warnings on approvals and stuff are now actually expected. There wasn't really like all that tooling that was built for developers really didn't ever surface up to the user level. Now, as we have grown as an industry and there's more institutional money coming in and less people who are willing to spend their whole lives looking at explorers and like reading contracts, we need to now bring the improvements from the developer experience up to the user experience level, right? So one core piece of history to show of like, you might be wondering, why am I showing DeFi Saver? That's not our company name. DeFi Saver is a good example of one of the early attempts at really improving the user experience here. So Zapper and a few others started building these things called zaps, right? Who here knows what a zap is? I saw some nods. Yeah, go for it.
A zap is just basically an automation?
Yes, it's an automation at the contract level. So a zap is essentially, if I wanted to move money between 3 different pools, normally I would have to go to 3 different UIs to go and execute, like deposit here, borrow there, supply over there, and then maybe stake over there, right? And a zap is essentially someone saying, hey, I'm going to build a contract that calls these functions so that the user only has to call one function on that contract, right? Sounds great. Except the problem is that these contracts, these zaps, are obviously all written in Solidity, which makes them very expensive to build, audit, test, and deploy, right? So you have to pay upwards of, it could be anywhere from 20, 30K or more to really get a new zap built out if it's for a new protocol, right? And that's if you can hire the talent that knows the Solidity and the protocols well enough to build it for you. So you had a few teams, again, like DeFi Saver, Instadap, Zapper, who did a good job of building these zaps that kept up with all these different strategies across protocols at a contract level. But you can imagine, again, new tokens and new protocols are deployed every week or two. They can't get to all of them. There is a limit to how fast these teams can build these zaps and keep up with all the needs of the customers. And zaps are only one side of the equation, right? That's just execution. You can't execute if you don't have good data around it. And data was worked on by other teams, such as like Dune, which many teammates are alumni of, or like DeFi Llama, who focus really hard on making the data analysis and tracking really work well. But none of them work on execution. They're like, oh, okay, you've done the analysis, that's the protocol you want, good luck. Go out there, find the buttons to click, And the execution side, it's like, here's the strategy, it's one click, good luck figuring out how to manage and monitor like everything that was happening in here. So we look at that and we're like, all right, with fancy new technologies such as 7702 and 5792 and a bunch of other 4-number words that don't really matter to most people, we can get the same UX as a Zap, which is like a one-click sign transaction, without having to put all of it on chain. We can actually bundle this stuff off chain, which means we get all of the benefits of the Zap structure without all of the cons in terms of testing, building, and deploying everything in Solidity, right? So that is what a trail is. A trail allows us to take something like this, which is a recipe on chain that's creating a new vault on Maker, wrapping ETH, supplying that ETH into the vault, borrowing DAI, supplying that DAI into Compound, which again, this is like usually maybe 2 or 3 different apps and like 7 or 8 pages on these apps. They do this completely on chain with a Zap. We have something called a trail, which essentially is just any set of functions on chain. If we work with any function as like any contract as soon as it's deployed. There's no integration time in terms of like our team having to do anything or like the Maker team having to write a custom integration. Our AI does all of the parsing so that you have obviously the ABI, but also everything about how the contract and the functions work, as well as understanding the transactions so that you have the context of like how do these functions actually work in the real world scenario. And so you can add these steps to a trail and basically start to decide, what should the user actually input? Like the user has to decide how much ETH to put up as collateral. And then the user also has to decide ultimately how much DAI they want to go and borrow out. But all the other steps in the middle, anyone, like you can just add this in and abstract that away from the user the same way that you could have with like the Zap, except if you wanted to then change this on someone else's trail later, you can just fork this and change it yourself. You don't have to go and redevelop a contract or like spend all of the time messing with moon math in Solidity, right? So the user experience of this looks like this, where we have all of these steps that you can execute in one transaction. And we have 2 main things we also provide here, because again, it's not just about execution, it's about all the context and safety you can have around it. So one is we have simulations. So all these steps you can execute on a fork and you can branch at any step if you want to test results at different points in time. And we also have an agent that's tied to all of this, right? So I can ask the agent, tell me about what happens in this trail, right? And Maker is a great example because who here has read Maker contracts before? How human readable are they?
Well, it depends if you know how to spit in the bucket after you kick the cat.
Fair enough. Yeah. Who here would know what frob means? What do you think frob does? Frob is how you borrow DAI, right? A lot of times these contracts are fully open and like open source and transparent on chain, but they're obfuscated in some way, so it's hard to understand. But with our AI, we fully understand how to actually convert this, what are we doing here? We're opening, we're joining, we're frobbing, we're dripping, we're frobbing again, we're hoping, exiting, and then minting. All fairly human readable, I'm sure. But the AI is able to explain this all in a much more human readable way. And everything from when we're going through simulations, when we're executing, when we're creating the trails, this agent is going to be able to help you be like, okay, how do I actually build the next steps for this trail? What is actually important read data or analytics data I need to go alongside, right? If I'm doing this trail, I might want to know at the end, what is my LTV on the simulation, And so that's all stuff that we provide. So it's not just execution, it's really the simulation, understanding, and everything else around it, right? Think about the times that you had to maybe share something on-chain with a friend, with a customer, a client, or a teammate, and how painful it was to be like, no, click that button, and then like look at that transaction and like copy that output there, look at that event, and that's what you're gonna go do next. That's so old school. We can't expect users to do that, especially as these more mature institutions, businesses come in. They're going to deploy a stablecoin and be like, yeah, I can't do anything else. I'm out, right? So enough talking. I'm on this trail. I'm going to set my balance on the simulation to 10 ETH. And I'll say, hey, let me borrow 8,000 DAI against my 8 ETH, right? And so normally this would be 13 transactions. Obviously, it would be 1 or 2 with DeFi Saver, with Zaps, but now we can just go and execute, and it didn't make me sign here because it's on a simulation, but you can imagine it's just one signature, and it can send all of this either in one batch transaction with 7702 or all sequentially, so that, the user doesn't have to sit there thinking about like, how do I actually go and do all of this? Right, and we have full interpretations on everything that happened of like what happened in my ETH, why did I gain 8 ETH here is because I deposited over here, or I can see at the end, my wallet actually gained, it looks like 300,000 C DAI, which is apparently worth 8,000, right? So I've just gone from ETH to wrapped ETH to collateralized ETH to minting out and borrowing DAI to depositing it in just one trail, right? And again, full simulations and everything. And if you want to be like, hey, I actually want to know what my collateralization, not collateralization ratio, LTV is after, I can still read data and do analytics at the state of this fork, right? So it's not like, after I've executed the simulation, I don't know how to check other things. I can click here and see the on-chain data because we're storing this fork data basically per step, right? That like I have 8,000 ETH or 8 ETH in here and I've borrowed 8,000, right? And I could go and ask Scout to then tell me more about my VAT earns if I wanted to. So this is the most complex and the worst the UX of our product will ever be. It's only going to improve from here if you're confused by anything that's showing up. We're working to open source the Trails spec by the end of the year so that we can really focus on helping you create and simulate and do all the testing you need around Trails. Obviously, you can use our API, but if you don't trust us enough and want to have more control over the execution lock-in, you'll be able to do that all on your own as well. So you can expect that coming later this year. Right now, we're focused mainly on DeFi, so looking at helping anyone who's working on vaults or stable coins and helping them build these strategies for actually executing and simulating and executing these strategies across Ethereum. I forgot to mention, we do have an API, so if you wanted to be able to build on our API for just getting the call data to execute, that's kind of how you can build on top of Herd without just executing in here. But yeah, if you're building any sort of vault or on top of vaults and you're worried about these one-click providers and their custom integrations and how long they're going to stick around, you can come to us instead and we'll help work with you to build any strategies you need and be your partner through these trying times. So anyways, that's DeFi, that's Herd. You can talk to anyone who's on the team after this if you have any questions, and you can always reach out to me or anyone on the team on Twitter as well. I'm Andrew Hong 5297 or Lemmy, depending on the platform. We're all friendly and don't bite. So cool. Thank you for your time.